Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your attendance this evening. I'm sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. I had to move into BPS's office, had some computer issues upstairs. This is the meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Today is Thursday, August 12th. On the agenda today, we have a number of capital items related to the Department of Public Safety. And some of the individuals we have presenting this evening, our Director Dan Isom of the Department of Public Safety. We have Sheriff Vernon Betts. We also have Fire Chief Dennis Jeckerson, as well as some facilities and equipment services people to describe some of the projects that were on the capital needs inventory. Now, Director Isom does have a scheduling conflict this evening, so we'd like to get some of the data or some of the project discussion that he would be involved with up at the top of the meeting. And then that would be related to corrections. And so what I'd like to do is be able to go through that project. We would then go to chats. So any questions you have related to the corrections, put that in the chat and we'll get to those. So then we could, Director Isom would then leave us and we'd move to the sheriff and the fire chief and the others. And then they would present on the rest of the public safety. And then once again, we'd go to chats for your questions. So without any further delay, let's go to Director Isom, and he has a presentation on basically the Justice Center. And if I could, I will go into sharing screen here. And you should all see a exhibit which says City Justice Center Security Upgrades.
Thank you, Director Payne, and thank you to the Citizen Advisory Committee for your attention to this presentation. This is the 2021 Justice Center Security Upgrades, and I'll go through the presentation. One of the critical issues that we need to update within the Justice Center are the cell doors and locks. The challenges that we've had with this system is that inmates have been able to compromise the locks. The hardware is no longer manufactured, and there's very difficult to procure parts at this point in time. So the solution to that is new minimum and maximum security cell doors, locks, frames, hardware, and glazing throughout the facility. The cost of that is $7.6 million to replace all the doors to have a more secure facility. The next item that we have is the day room window protection. As unfortunately many have seen in the past disturbances that we've had at the Justice Center, detainees were able to get to the outside windows. That is because they were able to defeat the existing screening around the doors leading to the exterior windows. As you can see in the posted picture, the solution to that is to install new heavy-duty, high-security screening and doors that will eliminate the ability to get to those exterior windows. That will be done on floors 3 and 4. The cost of that is $1.3 million. The next item are the controls and officer protection. So the challenge here is that the software that was initially put into the Justice Center is proprietary. It's outdated and no longer supported. And also portions of the system were made inoperable by the damages in the uprising to the existing controls and to the guard stations because they were unprotected in the day room, so in the open area of the pods. So the solutions to that is the new facility-wide control system utilizing easy obtained hardware and non-proprietary software will be the control systems throughout the Justice Center. We will also have new elevated and protected guard control stations on the 3rd and 4th floor, allowing for a single guard to control 2 pods and also to view the recreation area as well. The operations will be controlled from that guard station, but there also be tablets so that roaming guards could also control doors and cell openings. There will also be a new protection sally port entrance. This is at the entrance to the day room between the slider door and the hall that leads to the open space in the cell pods. And then we are also exploring dividing the pods into more areas for control of population. So the cost of the control systems new is $4 million, the guard station $3 million, and we still are working out the details of the sally port entrance and also the potential division of the day room. In the next slide, you will see a presentation of the challenge and the solution. So on the left are the control panels in the existing units. As you can see, it's within the pod. There's no separation from detainees, and it is not protected. In the rendering on the right, you will see that these control mechanisms, these guard stations, will be elevated where the guard can look over into this pod here, but also the day room, which is in this area, and then also moving to the opposite pod on the opposite side of the building. So this will be an elevated guard station. The controls to the doors and systems will be protected, along with the guard being in a controlled area that is protected. So that is the solution to protecting the officers and protecting the control systems within the Justice Center. The next slide is related to the furniture. The challenge was the existing furniture was not corrections grade, was not secured and fastened to the floor. So inmates were able to utilize the furniture to damage control stations that you saw in the previous slide, the security screen around the window, which you saw in the previous slide, and multiple uprisings. So the solution, which is consistent with many facilities on the 3rd and 4th floor, will be new corrections grade day room furniture which will be securely fastened to the floor. The cost of that is about $600,000. Then the next slide is lighting. So the challenges with lighting is inmates were able to damage the cell lighting fixtures, which are inside the cell, and in some cases, fashion weapons or tools out of these lights. The existing day room light fixtures were also hanging too low, allowing inmates to strike them, creating objects and debris that also could be fashioned to weapons. So the solution to that is upgrading the lighting to super max security level cells so that the lights within the cells could not be destroyed or used to make weapons, but also lighting in the day room, which will be hung much higher and secured with aviation cable to prevent them from being dislodged from the roof. And you can see the depiction of the current lighting on the left here in the slide. The cost of those upgrades is $1.9 million. And then finally, we have an alarm system that was the existing alarm system that was put in the facility in the 2000s. It's in need of comprehensive diagnostic testing and upgrades. So there will be a comprehensive diagnostic testing of the firmware upgrade, software upgrades, testing and replacement of all heat detectors. There's 15 in total of that. Smoke detectors, 253 in total. HVAC system duct detectors, there's 154 of those in totals that to make sure that they are functional. So the master control, remote panels, controlling horns, activations, existing panels will be fully checked. So they are fully functional, and any components falling outside of the specifications will be replaced, and all wiring will be checked for grounded fault conditions. The cost of updating the alarm system is $500,000. Plus about 110K per year for testing and device cleaning. Cost summary, cell doors, as I said, 1.6, day room window protection, 1.3, the control systems, officer protection, 7 million, furniture, 600,000, lighting, 1.9, firearm, 500,000, and design fee, 600,000, a total of 19.5 million for the total cost of the project, and then scheduled to be completed in the second quarter of 2023. These upgrades will put us in line with completely up-to-date Justice Center that will be good for the protection of detainees, but also certainly the protection of our hardworking correctional officers who do a great job every day.
Hey, thank you, Director Isom. Let's go to the chats, and we'll cover any items related to the corrections in the chat line. So I see a number of questions lining up here. Okay, some questions related to process and moving forward, and on ARPA funding. I'm going to say that till the end so we can go over that, but let's go through corrections first. Let's see. It's like while you're waiting for me to get online, you had some other questions, so I'll get that. Let's see. Okay. A lot of ARPA questions here. Let's see. Okay, for CJC improvements, can you explain how the Corrections Task Force recommendations were considered? So in other words, were some of those recommendations that the Correction Task Force made, I guess that was earlier this year, incorporated into any of these?
I don't believe that the Corrections Task Force really had many recommendations that were related to security upgrades in the facility. Most of what came from these upgrades were a professional consultant and also input from the correctional officers.
Okay. ARPA question. Okay, would these upgrades stop the shipping of inmates to other states?
No.
Okay. All of these updates serve to make it less likely that detainees would be able to damage the facility, but don't address the living conditions for detainees, which is one of the reasons for the previous unrest. Are there plans to make the facility a more habitable and humane place?
Well, I would argue if you don't have control in terms of the locks and doors on the facility, then not only is it a danger to corrections officers, it's a danger to detainees as well. So our ability to make sure that everyone is safe is our primary responsibility as the city of St. Louis and as a correctional facility. And so when we can do that and we can make sure that everyone is safe and we can have proper controls of the population, then we can begin to add programming, resources to all the detainees so that conditions are more inhabitable and livable. We also have the ability to make sure the place is secure and clean and all those things that need to be done. But without being able to control and secure the population, none of that is possible.
Okay. What is the estimated delivery time for the new doors and locks? Is this expense for cell doors only? What about exterior doors and windows? Are there plans to upgrade exterior doors and windows?
So I would just take that question. The new locks are on order at this time. This is primarily interior on the building. There are no upgrades related to this project for the exterior of the building. It's primarily interior and within inside the housing units where the detainees are, other than the areas of the control station, master control station, and Sally Port control doors that lead to entry of the building, but nothing on the exterior of the building at this time. At this point in time, the exterior of the building, less a possible roof replacement, is in very good condition.
Lost control of your mouse here.
You did it unplug on the side.
Yeah. Lost control of the mouse. Let's see if we can. Okay. Okay, looking down. Down. Were any of the, let me see, cost savings from closing the MSI used for improvements at the Justice Center? And why were the previous locks that were installed not successful? The locks that were installed recently, to clarify. I can speak to the first question in terms of from an operating standpoint, we were still using the same personnel that were over at MSI. They were originally moved over to CJC when everyone was moved over at that point in time. And then some have been moved back to MSI, at least temporarily, to handle that population over there. So there wasn't any significant change on the expense line. And for those who are interested, there are some budget exhibits online on the budget page that illustrates those changes there. I'll have to defer.
I wouldn't turn it.
What was the second question?
So I'll answer the second question. Rich Bradley here from BPS, standing off on the left here. There was not a problem with the new locks that were put in place. What you have to understand is part of the project that Director Isom just presented is a control system which operates all the locks. The existing control system that's in place now is failing. And until that new control system is put in place, it also operates the brand new locks that were just put in. So as we're phasing this with detainees inside the building, we're installing new locks. Once that control system is in place, the new locks work on the new control system. The failure was the old control system, not the new locks.
Okay, and I jumped a question here. These upgrades are slated for completion in 23. Clearly, there is a need to secure the facility adequately right now. Are there dollars included for short-term solutions while these longer-term improvements are made? And can the living conditions be prioritized along with the short-term need to secure the facility?
So yes, we are doing repairs and upgrades as we speak. I will continue to say that without security, you cannot have the proper living conditions. And so on the situation with the locks, we have developed some solutions that we have tested, that we feel comfortable that detainees will not be able to defeat the locks. We have removed movable furniture from the day room and anchored, corrections grade furniture in the day room. We've removed the control panels, and we've also instituted some other things in the short term, a sally port that we will be putting in to give more protection to corrections officers. We have made some lighting changes already, both to the cells and the day room. We have done some modifications to secure the front windows and a couple other things that we have done in the short term to make things more secure as we have the ultimate upgrades for the Justice Center. So we are not holding in place, waiting for these things to be done. We're making modifications as we that exist today to make this facility more secure.
The other task force question, I think you had addressed that. Regarding the 2 million in lighting being updated to Supermax style, do we believe that's necessary if the locking system works?
Yes. We have a jail that has a mix of different levels of detainees. And so we need to have a facility that is capable of holding detainees, both high and low risk detainees. So yes, we need that type of lighting throughout the facility.
Okay, the next question references a transfer of 1.5 million in funds to repair the locks last fiscal year. Yeah, I'll address that one. Of this total estimated cost of 19.5 million for improvements to the Justice Center, we identified about 7 million in last year's budget and move those funds. That's why on your inventory, that total is only 12.5. So what needs to be further funded is the 12.5 of that 19 million, 19.5 million total. So yes, there were some funds set aside in last year's budget to address some of that. That was to get us started on the project, but then the additional funds are needed to complete.
I also add to that last person's question about the need for max lighting is that our population in our jails are at historic lows. And the reason for that is that we are only detaining high-risk detainees. So the population is a lot different than it used to be because we are not holding as many nonviolent detainees as we have in the past.
This next question, I believe is something that Director Isom, you discussed. Without security, we can't have proper living conditions. Please elaborate on how these two things are mutually exclusive. You talked earlier about providing safety, the importance of providing safety to both staff and the inmates in the facility.
Right. Well, I mean, if you don't have proper security within the facility, then it's very difficult to have all the things that lead to proper living conditions. So we need to have a facility that is secure and that is safe, so we could provide all the different, resources and services that we need to provide to individuals who are inside the facility. So I think they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Are these recommended upgrades to be totally funded by American Rescue Plan Act? From this particular source, we can talk about sources because we're going to have both ARPA funds as well as we're going to have our regular budget funds, but our capital funds. I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to strategize over how to maximize the biggest bang for the buck, because there are certain projects that you can't use federal funds to match other federal funds, and like some of those streets and bridges. So obviously, in that instance, you still want the 4-to-1 match. You might use your local funds for that and reserve some of these other improvements for the ARPA funds. So I would guess that would be the case, but we're going to have to look at that once we come up with recommendations. Okay, I'd like to question on fully funding the kitchen renovations. Maybe in the works already, but is capital investment recommendation made by the task force? So this was a task force recommendation. Was there kitchen improvements? That's not included in this proposal. Yeah, these are more security and safety issues related. This is a question about operating costs of corrections compared to similarly sized cities. And that's a more detailed question and not particularly capital related. But, let's see. Down to the end. Were these funds in the 2015 bond issue for locks at the CJC? If you are referencing the 2016 and 2018 GO bonds, they were not. I think getting close to the end here. I believe. Okay, I think we're at the end of the questions regarding corrections. And actually, we're running out of time for the Director Isom. I didn't see any questions about funding sources, which we'll address later. But that's all we have for corrections at the moment. I'd like to thank Director Isom for presenting. And obviously, if you have any additional questions, you can always contact and we'll get back to you with specifics. But we probably need to move on to some other materials. Okay, we do have a number of people available to present. One of the big items on the list is the public safety answering point, which is the 911 system. I think that's an important exhibit, and I know they have it. Actually, they have it available to them. So is that Yerrick is going to be making that presentation? Are you with us, Yerrick?
Yes, I am.
There's been 3 questions that weren't answered, Paul. I don't know if you missed them. They're at 5:57. Are related to public safety, and a couple of them have been re-upped again. So I just want to make sure they don't get missed. I raised my hand, but didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. What?
5:57.
Yeah, I'd be more on top of my own PC here. Which was the question? Let's see.
There's a question at 5:50 in the 7 in the chat. The Justice Center is just shy of 20 years old and was constructed by a local company, McCarthy, that advertises they build prisons. How did all these issues happen? And does the city have recourse to go back to them for funds to replace the items that were not prison grade? And then there's 2 more just below that one.
Yeah, and again, Rich may have some thoughts on that. I do know when this building was financed, I do know there was a certain philosophy about how you built facilities at that time in terms of the open floor system, in terms of the control system being on the floor and being among circulation of the inmates and all. That was actually at the time the status. That was the state of the art at the time. As we find out, that's not working for our particular population. But I don't know, Rich, did you want to add something?
So I would just add a couple of pieces to that. Yes, you are correct. That was the contractor, I believe. Technically, it was designed by Canon, which was the architect that designed it in those days. A 20-year facility. And basically what you got is a situation that Paul just described, where correctional standards in the time that it was built, designed in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, constructed in the late 90s to 2000, was constructed for a much lower grade inmate than we have there today, as Director Isom had just mentioned to you before. So the locks that we have in our jail today are the same locks that many other municipalities around the St. Louis area have, without going into detailed discussions of who, what's, where, when's. So other people have them, they work for them, they are having issues here simply because of the grade of inmates that are here. And the whole direct supervision idea was something that has been thought out and rethought out time and time again and again, with a lower grade inmate, a lesser grade person. You would not have a problem probably with most direct supervisions in a much smaller pod. Direct supervision today is done in pods of less than 30, 35, 40 units. Our units have 60, 61 units in them, 66 units in them, I believe. And so we have a big pod with one officer. It is too much, and it's old school mentality. That's why we're upgrading to what we're doing. But as far as recourse goes, we will have those discussions internally. And if there is any merit to it, we will discuss that with our city councilor, and we would file legal action if appropriate.
Okay, the next question was, what will be the final security rating of the entire facility? Do we know that?
So it would be between medium and maximum, and as opposed to minimum and medium. It was actually mostly minimum prior to these events occurring, with a minimum in most, median in the highest. Now we're changing it to a few median and mostly maximum. So we're going just the other direction.
And finally, I believe that third question was also, are the costs of proposed solutions in alignment with what is being spent by Corrections Department in similarly sized cities?
So we have hired one of the best penal architects in the country. And this penal architect has worked around the country, and they have done prisons from Pelican Bay all the way on a federal institutional level, all the way down to a municipal jail of a small municipality. And we believe that after they have looked at our issues here, discussed it with us, and worked through the problems, that this is the best and most cost-effective solution for the population of inmates that we have.
And I'll add to that, just for reference, for a city similar in terms of detainee population is Fulton County, Georgia. Other cities who have these types of locks have experienced the same problems. And Fulton County, Georgia did a complete upgrade of their locking systems, similar to what we are doing, which has had the effect of dealing with their problems. So, you know, we are making the upgrades that are necessary for the type of population that we have today, and consistent with what other communities are doing with similar urban areas.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for pointing out those questions. And thank you, Director Isom, for your time this evening. As I mentioned, we do, the next item I'd like to get through here is the PSAP discussion. I know there's a presentation, Yerrick, who you'll recall from doing a nice streets presentation last week, has a presentation on that. This is the consolidation of the 911 systems, and he has a prepared presentation. So Yerrick, are you there?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Paul.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen now?
Next we'll do,
Can you see my screen? Yes.
it's gonna be real quick.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jarek Chernikevich. I'm Chief of Design Division and Department of the President of Board of Public Service. There are three numbers that are universally known and used everywhere in North America. Those numbers are 911. One of the worst things that can happen is that you call 911 and the phone rings and you get put on hold. According to recent statistics, only 2/3 of St. Louis 911 calls are answered within 10 seconds versus 90%, which is considered a grade of service. That's why today we are requesting a total of $32 million for completion of the Public Safety Answering Point project. The Public Safety Answering Point facility will be a new emergency operations center that combines police, fire, emergency medical services dispatch, SEMA, and in the future Citizen Services Bureau. In 2008, the City of St. Louis commissioned a study to review the economic, operational, and technical feasibility of forming a joint intra-city communication center. That report contains specific recommendations and guidelines for the construction of the state-of-the-art facility or public safety answering point. Construction of this facility is part of the overall plan to improve 911 response system and consolidate emergency response services. The Public Safety Answering Point facility will be located on the city-owned property near Jefferson and Cass. This is behind the fire department headquarters. We anticipate it will be a one-story resilient building, approximately 17,000 square feet, constructed and operated according to the current National Fire Protection Association standards and incident command system. This essential mission-critical facility will support both day-to-day operations and emergency stand-up operations with the associated utility, technology, and infrastructure to sustain 365 days a year, 24/7 operations, often under extreme conditions. The project scope will include site improvements, building construction, and installing new systems for call handling, computer-aided dispatch, and record management. This table illustrates the project schedule. Notice to proceed for the project with phase 1 facility was issued in January 2020. However, the project was put on hold in May 2020 due to COVID. Originally, we anticipated that phase would complete in the 4th quarter, but due to schedule delay, you can see in this table, this changed. If the funding for the continuation of the project is approved and the project is restarted shortly, we anticipate completion in the 3rd quarter of 2025. as it is listed here, with all the phases also listed in the table. This table illustrates project financial summary. As I mentioned earlier, projected cost is 32 million. This is for a fully operational facility, including building and systems. We have already engaged an architecture engineering consultant specializing in design of emergency response facilities, who began work on the project back in January 2020. The total contract amount for that is $2,445,452. Out of that amount, $115,432,000 was expended before project was put on hold in May 2020. Summarizing, this project is critically important to public safety in the city of St. Louis. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Yarek. Do we have question? Let me see. Well, I tell you what, let's go to let's go immediately to the sheriff. He's been waiting patiently here. Is Sheriff Sheriff Betts, are you still with us?
I'm still with you, Paul.
The sheriff had a number of items in addition to corrections and police and fire, and you'll see those on the list. And these arose out of some increased responsibilities the sheriff had over in the last couple of years. And so we thought it would be a good idea for you to get a handle on those, and the sheriff would like to present. So the floor is yours, Sheriff.
Okay, Paul, well, thank you so much. And I want to thank the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm excited about being able to talk to the citizens of St. Louis about the needs of the Sheriff Department. So right off the top, I have my, I apologize if everybody don't have in writing my list of items that I need. If you do need something in black and white, call my office tomorrow and I can make sure I get that to those folks, Paul.
Sheriff, just so you know, everyone has a copy of that inventory. It's also
Okay.
posted online. So it
Okay.
is, if I could pull it up on the shared screen, I'm a little hampered here by being moved where I'm at, but
Sure, okay. That's
okay.
okay. Well, I'll run down my list. Of course, we need 180 radios, and our radios are essential to our operation. For whatever reason, we didn't get on board with the St. Louis Police Department that usually takes care of our radio issues. So we need 180 radios that's a cost of $511,118.20. The current radio life is about to end. We've had the radios that we have now are 13 years old. And Paul, is something wrong? Paul, you okay?
Oh, you're good. You're good.
And so those radios are 13 years old. The life of those radios is about to expire. And so we need to upgrade. Plus, I think the St. Louis Police Department has gone from the people that we used to buy the radios from. Am I right there? From Motorola.
We're still same company.
Same company.
Just upgrading.
But we want to upgrade those radios. So like I said, the price was about $511,000. We need tasers. Again, 120 tasers, and the sheriff needs that equipment in order to meet our lethal force needs. So of course, you know, we carry a gun, carry mace, carry tasers, and we need those tasers in order to meet the need of non-lethal force. Tasers too also have a shelf life, and most of our tasers are about to expire. The cost of tasers is going to be $140,820. Same thing applies with our armored vests. We need 120 armored vests. That the cost of that is about $80,000, and all the equipment that we're talking about has a shelf life. It expires, and so then the quality and the ability for that equipment to provide the security that we need will no longer be there. So we need 120 vests, and that's $80,000. Of course, we're in a climate where there could be protests at any time, and so we need riot gear. Presently, we have about 20 gas masks. We need about 60 gas masks, and the cost of that would be about $60,000. You know, our department was involved in the 4 of the 6 riots that we've had at the jail, and we sent 60 deputies into the jail, and only 20 of them had gas masks, and one of those persons included myself without a gas mask, which was extremely dangerous, but we went in without proper equipment and was able to bring about a resolution to that. So again, we need gas masks. If we have riots and stuff like that, we won't be able to participate at the level that we should. With all of this equipment that we're asking for, we need shelving downstairs in our property room, and I don't think most folk know that the sheriff is also the custodian of property that comes from our people that we arrest and stuff like that. And so we need shelving. That's a cost of $22,000. Uniforms and gear. Paul, you seem disturbed. You okay? I can't hear you, Paul. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Thumbs up? Okay. All right. So again, you know, I've been in this position for 4 years. I came in, we had only a change of uniform, 2 sets of change of uniform. And so that's something that we've been working on and trying to supply our deputies with more than just 2 pair of pants and 2 shirts and all that. So if we could equip our 160 deputies properly with maybe 3, 4, or possibly even 5 sets of uniforms, that would be a change of clothes for every day. That would be at a cost of about $250,000. And we're in dire need of because I get deputies every day who have torn up uniforms, soiled and all that, and we need new uniforms. Laptop computers is something that we need to help make our operations more efficient. And we've figured that we need about 30 laptops at a cost of about $27,000. Got a few more things here, just a few more. The cost of ammunition, something that we need for our guns. That cost comes across at about $6,486. And Tammy, that gives us ammunition for just the duration of one year. And of course, we have to qualify twice a year, qualify for using our firearms. And we shoot up about $10,000 worth of bullets every time we qualify. So we're looking for money for ammunition. First aid is a big issue over here at the courthouse. You know, earlier this year, we had a judge in St. Louis County that had a heart attack, and they were able to revive him because they had training on the defibrillators. Well, we have the defibrillators, but we haven't had the training. And that's something that the judges and people in the building are extremely concerned about, and we need that training so that we can get the training on the defibrillator. That first aid training is about $3,000.
Sheriff, I was gonna jump in if you don't mind. Yeah, we're focused right now on your capital items because that's what the committee is focusing on. So some of those items which are operational and they're fine to request, but we're trying to focus on, particularly this capital committee, this Citizens Advisory Committee for Capital, on capital items.
Okay, well, I think, Paul, I got 3 more items then that I will share with you. Of course, we need vans. We need about 20 new vans. That's at a cost of about, is that a capital item, Paul?
Just so for everyone's benefit, usually what we do with vehicles, and we'll be talking that on a separate day, is that our equipment services manager, and along with BPS, evaluates the status of the fleet in terms of priority, and then makes the recommendations regarding fleet purchases. So any request from departments regarding fleet usually runs through the equipment services division for review.
Okay, only other thing, we're looking at body cameras at a cost of about $200,000. Yes or no, Paul?
Well, Sheriff, yeah, we'd have to look at that. I do know that with the police department, it ended up being an operational cost as opposed to a capital item.
Okay.
And there were both operational costs for running them as well as purchasing them, and it wasn't in the capital budget.
Okay, well, Paul, basically then, the things that I've already mentioned are the things that I think we would run through capital gains. So overall, we had surmised that I would need about $2,927,825. But now pulling out those, if we're talking just those capital gain items, Paul, it would be way less than that. And so I didn't figure that up right here, right now. But I could always go back and figure up those numbers, but we're not talking about for everything that the sheriff needs. And I know that the Citizens Advisory Committee is sitting listening. Everything that I need would only cost me a couple of $1 million, everything. So whatever I can get, we need to cover those areas that we've just talked about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sheriff. Yeah, again, we're focusing mostly on capital, and just for the benefit of the committee, from an accounting standpoint, most capital is at least a $5,000 item. But from the capital committee, usually what we do is we recommend items that are less than $50,000 be operational in nature, basically trying to work them into the operating budget. Larger items than 50,000 are generally say, okay, well, that's more something for consideration of the capital committee. So that's usually how we handle that. I noticed a couple items on there less than $50,000. So we may have to, that doesn't mean we can't fund those. It's just that those are the considerations, whether or not we consider those as an operational request item versus a capital.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Paul.
I tell you what, looking at the list, let's get to the fire chief. I know he has also been here waiting patiently. And let's get into that discussion. Chief Jenkerson, are you still with us?
I'm still here. You're going to be able to share the screen with the capital request for facilities. You have that available, Paul?
Let's see if I can do that. I don't have it. Can I share this? Why don't you go ahead, Chief, and I'll bring it up when I get to that.
Okay. I'm going to run down the sheet of requests that we worked on over the last year. This is in regards to the facilities that the fire and EMS department are in. First off, and this was developed in conjunction with the Board of Public Service and the help of Rich Bradley, the President of Board of Public Service. So we've been working on this for several years. First item. Okay, that's it, Paul. You got it. Perfect. Item number one, and these were listed in critical, needed, and desirable. So we're going to stay strictly with the critical needs. The first one was 1.5 million, and that is to replace the final 9 roofs of firehouses across the city. We have 30 firehouses plus headquarters, and we've been working on these houses over the years. So we need to finish with these 9 houses. And Board of Public Service has that estimated at about 1.5. And in the past years, we've been right on track with these numbers, if in fact a little bit less. So I feel very comfortable with the number that the BPS provided. Item number 2, fire department repair and storage garage. That is a full roof replacement that needs to be handled to prevent leaks and mold. And we've been working on that for several years also. Item number 3, It's another finalization of projects we've been working on for several years, almost 10. The HVAC and plumbing upgrades at all firehouses, which comes in at about 2.2 million. Item on the list, number 7 of critical needs, which is described as a MagnaGrip exhaust system upgrade. We bought this system originally through a federal grant, and we had this system installed about 5 years ago. And what this system does, it removes all of the exhaust gases that our fire trucks and ambulances extrude when they start up in the firehouse and leave, or when they back in. And this removes all the exhaust system gases that accumulate in the firehouses, which the last 4 years we've been working on a cancer reduction, and we've got cancer in the fire service is about 40 to almost 45% higher than any other normal civilian job. So part of this is getting the exhaust system out of the house, and this is just an upgrade or a repair to the system we currently have, which is coming in at about 200,000. And this has been we brought an outside company in to look at this and give us a cost on upgrading and repairing this system. Moving down to number 10, replace 10 floors in the firehouses. This would be the last 10 that need to be replaced in the bond issue that took place in 2007, I believe. They originally installed carpet in the firehouses. Carpet and firefighters do not go together. So over the past 14 years, we've been pulling out all the carpet and replacing it with industrial grade vinyl. So we have 10 floors that we have left to do out of 30 firehouses, and that will finish that project. So all of those costs that I put together, which we consider critical needs, comes up to about $4.9 million. And all of these projects we've been working on for my 14 years as chief. So this will finish most of the upgrading that was necessary in the old firehouses in the city. You got anything to add to that, Rich? I know you've been working on this with us.
Chief, I think that's a great presentation. You explained it crisply, so thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Chief. I tell you what, let's go on to your fire department equipment.
Okay.
Everyone has that exhibit. I might pull up the revised exhibit so we've got it, but go ahead, going into your presentation on that, and we'll see where we end up there and whether or not we just go to questions and save the rest for next week's meeting and move from there. So,
Okay.
Yeah. And we also have Chris Amos available to talk about vehicles.
That's fine. Paul, do you have that, the 3 extra sheets I sent you? I might want to start with that to give kind of overview.
Go ahead and start, and let me see if I can bring those up.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, the fire department also has critical needs on some of our apparatus, our trucks, which include both fire trucks and ambulances. And over the past 14 years, we have, rather than replace the entire fleet at one time, we've went into a stepped replacement, if you will, and we've replaced 2/3 of our fleet. We have about 1/3 left to replace. The 1/3 that we are requesting are approximately 12 years old. It takes us approximately a year to build a fire truck and about 9 to 10 months to build an ambulance. So what we are requesting in this, and I was kind of waiting for the slide to come up, but I'll skip to the back. We are requesting to replace 8 of our ambulances. We run a total of 12 ambulances per day. Our ambulances generally last 4 to 5 years on frontline, and then we try and get a couple years out of reserve status, but we do run our ambulances very hard. So we're looking at replacing 8 ambulances at a cost of about $280,000 a piece, which comes up to about $2,240,000. Here we go. So we're trying to replace 8 of those ambulances. We're running what's considered a 14-foot box on a heavy-duty pickup truck style body, which has been fairly good for us. Other critical needs, I'm going to move into fire department trucks. There's a picture of the ambulance. It's a pickup style, heavy-duty pickup, 4-wheel drive with a 14-foot box. It allows us to provide trauma care to the citizens of the city. when it says capable of treating and transporting multiple patients, it's also very capable of allowing multiple medics in the back of this unit to operate on a victim, which with some of the traumas that we are faced with, it takes more than one paramedic in the back. So many of our firefighters are trained as paramedics. So on any given day, we'll put 2 or 3 or 4 medics in the back of these units to provide care. Yes, I see a question coming up. Have we thought about smaller ambulances? Yes, we've tried them, but we can't get the equipment that we need in them as a trauma service. There's a difference between trauma and transfer. Transfer is when you transport people from different health facilities to hospitals and from hospitals back to the health facility. We do not do that in the city. We provide trauma care. So that's why we need a piece of equipment that houses all of our equipment and is able to house the equipment securely and also have the ability and the space for multiple paramedics to operate in. I don't know if you want to kick to the next slide, Paul. I'll move on. We're also asking for replacement of 1/3 of our fire apparatus fleet, actual fire trucks. And we run 3 types of trucks. We run a pumper, which doesn't have a ladder on it. We also run trucks, which is a Quint style truck, which has a 75-foot ladder and pumps on it. And we also run a hook and ladder, which is very familiar to most people, which is a 125-foot ladder. We are requesting to replace 9 of our pumpers, 1 of our 75-foot trucks, and 2 of our hook and ladders. The equipment that we are asking to replace is going on 12 years old. And which is pictured on the screen now, that's a 125-foot hook and ladder right there. That is, okay, you guys are going fast on me. There's the hook and ladder. We've got 2 of these that we need to replace, hook and ladder 5 and hook and ladder 6. Hook and ladder 5 is on the west end, hook and ladder 6 is up in North City. These units right now are going on 12 years old. It takes me a year to build a new fire truck, so we'll be looking at 13 years of service on these trucks. We like to try and move our trucks into reserve status 10 to 11 years of service. So they're used as backup. So we need to replace 2 of these at a cost of about $1.4 million a piece. And that does include equipment on all the trucks. When we buy a truck to get NFPA certification, we do have to replace all the equipment on it, which is all the ladders, the hoses, the rescue tools, the pike poles, the axes, anything that makes a hook and ladder standard NFPA equipment, I have to replace that. So that cost also includes all of the equipment that comes along with the truck, certifying it as a hook and ladder. Okay, let's move on to the 75-footer if you can. We're asking to replace 1 75-foot truck, which is this one here. We house a 75-foot truck over at Engine House 22, which is over on McCausland and Highway 40. That truck right there is almost 20 years old, going on 21 years old. We need to replace that as soon as possible. And I'm just asking for 1 of those because we just did replace the rest of the 75-foot trucks in the city. That truck is priced at about $1.2 million. And same way, we'll get minimum 10 years of that as a frontline service and be able to place the other ones into reserve. But this one needs to replace quickly. Let's go to the pumpers. We're asking to replace 9 pumpers in the city. The 9 pumpers are located in different districts in the city. They're approaching 12 years old. We like to be able to replace these and put the 9 that we have currently on the streets into reserve status, which we will hold on to probably for about another 9 to 10 years. These pumpers the same way will come fully equipped, hose and all the tools that we need to operate and keep our ratings up. Total that we're requesting is $14.425 million. I did include a sheet, and I don't know if we can get at it, but it kind of describes the how our trucks are divided up in the city. The City of St. Louis Fire Department has 6 fire districts. Each district has 6 pieces of fire apparatus manned daily. Each district has 2 to 3 pumpers. Each district has 2 or 3 75-foot trucks, depending on which ones have rescue squads. And each district has a 125-foot hook and ladder or 100-foot aerial platform. So the pages that I provided, and like I said, I don't know if we could pull this up because Paul's having some difficulties over there with his computer, but I did list which companies we are replacing. So St. Louis Fire Department keeps a truck for approximately 20 years. And then they're basically put out to scrap almost, because we do run them hard. Like I said before, it takes about a year to build these trucks. So by the time we get the new ones in, we're going to be looking at 13 years. I did want to add one thing to the presentation here is our ISO rating, which is Insurance Service Office rating for the city of St. Louis, is dependent on the ages of the fire trucks that we have. And once we start extending past 10 years, if they would come back in and do a rating on us, which we're probably due in about 3 years, based on the age of our apparatus, it could cause us to lose a classification, which affects our insurance rates for both commercial and residential homes in the city. So it's pretty imperative to keep our fleet up and ready and up to the NFPA standards.
Okay, thank you, Chief. One thing and the Chief referenced an exhibit I had asked earlier today in terms of the total fleet, so you have an idea, because sometimes you get a list of vehicles and you don't know how they fit into the overall fleet. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull that exhibit up, but I will end up posting that, so we do have access to that if you're interested. And again, it shows you the districts that the Chief was talking about. I'd also like to thank Chris Amos. Chris, he was sharing the screen. Chris, did you have any other things, nuances and about fire vehicles that you wanted to add?
No, I think that we're on a good path. The fire department fleet's in much better shape than most of the city is, as it probably should be, being a public safety entity. And so the schedule we're on is getting the job done. And my guys are able to keep enough trucks on the street to take care of the fire department's needs. So I think the plan we have working with the chief is working out well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, I tell you what, given where we are on time, we did have a couple building items for police as well as some police vehicles. Let's next week we're scheduled to go over some city buildings as well as other vehicles that Chris is going to be going over. We'll just move that material to next week, and because I'd really like to get to the chats and some good questions here, lengthy. So let's do that first. This is let's see. I'm trying to go back up here. Is the sheriff still on with us? Okay.
I don't see him.
Okay, I tell you what, there are a number of questions for the sheriff, and we'll have to get those to him, and we'll get some responses out if that's okay. But let's get down to fire. Okay, question. Are firehouse roof replacements planned, cycled to be ongoing?
Yes, I will answer that question. Rich Bradley here. So the life cycle, typical life cycle of our roofs is about 15 to 20 years. We typically get anywhere from 25 to 30 out of them. We do replace them on about a 30-year cycle. And so once we get through these other 9 houses, as the chief mentioned, we'll have knocked off 30 houses and the headquarters, and we will be good for the very foreseeable future.
Okay, next question. To be forward thinking, can these vehicles be electric? Can the fire department facilities be upgraded with electrical vehicle charging?
Okay, we've looked at electric trucks. The problem with electric trucks is the mission that they're able to perform. That mission is limited. When we go to a fire, I mean, many times we're stuck on that fire scene for 2, 3, 4 hours. And the capability of these electric vehicles, and there's really only one manufacturer right now, Rosenbauer, that's making an electric fire truck, and it has a very limited scope of time that you can actually drive to the scene and then operate on the scene and pump. Once you go to pump capabilities on a fire truck, it puts a severe strain on these battery vehicles. They're not where they should be yet in order to be considered. They're still considered experimental.
Okay, have smaller ambulances been considered?
Yes, at the time, right now, we do have two smaller vehicles called Sprinters, which is more of a transfer style ambulance. And we've used them for some of the parades, some of the bicycle races, some of the different smaller events that happen around the city, the festivals and all that. The smaller ambulances, and I'll use the Sprinter as an example, don't give us the ability to work around a patient who's in the back of an ambulance in a trauma. Normally in that type of vehicle, the position of the stretcher or the cot is moved all the way over against the wall for operational abilities. And so it's based on the type of service that we run, they do not work for us.
With the need for new and improved vehicles, is there any possible way to find a slightly more environmentally friendly option with less carbon emissions?
So Rich Bradley, I'll answer this and I'll let Chris Amos talk about it for just a minute. The city of St. Louis has identified in our regular fleet vehicles, those vehicles that can be EVs. And we have recently purchased a number of them. We just started installing electric stations for them, and we are going to use them as light duty vehicles. Chris, you want to expound on that a little?
I think you're muted, Chris.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, the first question about the fire engines is that this last 3 years worth of 2017 on have been more fuel efficient and less emissions, because instead of the big Cummins diesel engine running when the vehicle is in stationary position, it actually has a small auxiliary power unit on it that powers everything on the truck, the pumps and the electronics and everything on that. So it is as efficient as a truck that size can be at this point. And on the EV question, we've got 8 of them purchased in this first year that we've been doing it. The first ones didn't get here until March, and then we've identified another 300 in cooperation with Ameren UE and the study we've been doing to identify those that are likely to break even for the types of vehicles that are available. And so those vehicles that will be good EVs, we will be replacing them with that if we can do so in a cost-effective manner. The problem up until this point has been that an electric vehicle, sometimes you get a diesel version for $35,000 and an electric version was $80,000. But that's changing now that the manufacturers are committed to producing more models that way. So we are making that transition as we're able to.
Okay, next question. A quick history of the demand trends on our fire department. Chief?
Okay, I guess the question is kind of pointed towards apparatus. As we look at specifications for our apparatus, what we specifically look at is trying to reduce injuries and the need for workman compensation payouts. And we looked at and studied 10 years ago how firemen were getting injured and what the most prone injuries were. And, we started changing the guide rails on the trucks. We started changing the need to climb on any fire truck. So that's been the biggest change on our trucks. If you look at the newer trucks that are moving around the city, you see they have kind of extended bumpers as opposed to climbing on top of the trucks to get at the hose. All of the hoses are at knee height. So when they pull them off and when they reload them, everything's done low. So we don't have as many shoulder injuries. We don't have as many back injuries. We don't have as many knee injuries. And we've really reduced that by how we've changed the ergonomics of a fire truck. The ability to look at the pumping capacities at a fire. What are we using? How much water are we using? Are we using too much? Are we using not enough? We're able to calculate the flow capacities. Can we change the position of an aerial ladder to get a better response on a fire based on flow capability? So we're able to look at that and make changes in our tactics on how we position trucks at a fire. So there's a lot more data that's coming off these fire trucks. We're able to monitor speed. we're able to, all of our trucks have cameras on them. So when people complain to us that, say, we took mirrors off the side of a car as we're going down the street, we can pull up the films and establish right away whether we did or we didn't. And most times we're able to find out, no, we didn't hit that car. People take the opportunity as a big truck comes down the street to say, oh, you hit us. We need to be paid. So the cameras, the ergonomics, there's a whole lot that goes into new trucks. And yes, we are keeping up with the all of the new improvements. And in fact, St. Louis has been questioned around the country for some of our new innovations, and people are following us as far as what we're doing with the fire truck. So no, we do keep up with the trends. And in fact, we're starting many of the trends around this country.
Okay, thank you, Chief. The next three questions are somewhat related. Oh, by the way.
There you go.
Chris Amos was sharing his screen. This is the apparatus requirements the Chief was talking about in terms of the 6 districts. And you can see those engines highlighted in red were the ones that are to be replaced, that he's requesting to be replaced. This document will be posted online with the other documents. So this was not one that I sent out earlier yesterday with the other thing else. So we'll get that one posted as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, going back to the questions. And again, these are related to retired vehicles or older vehicles. What happens to retired vehicles? How often are these vehicles replaced, and what do we do with the old vehicles? And are reserve vehicles stored outdoors?
So I think that would be a great question to let Chris Amos speak on.
Be happy to. Well, as the chief said, we wear out the fire trucks before we let them go. So basically, we keep 9 quints, the 75-foot ladders or pumpers, and a couple of hook and ladders and a couple squads and a fire truck, a fuel truck, in order as backups. And so when we replace these vehicles like we're doing right now, that is what they are designed to be put into backup service. The better ones, the ones that are completely shot, need engine, transmission, pump, the whole works, a couple $100,000 worth of work. We don't use those. And so we send them to a competitive auction, and the auction sells them. And as the chief said, they mostly go for scrap value. I think the most I've ever seen a 75-foot ladder truck go for at auction was a little less than $6,000. And sometimes there's little as $4,000 or $5,000. But it's because they're just taking the engine, transmission, other components and send them to rebuilders. And then they're taking all the sheet metal and everything off the truck and using that for scrap. And so that's really all their work by the time we let go of them. If they still got life in them, we're using them until they completely die. In fact, almost every fire truck we get rid of, we have to tow to the auction.
And where are those stored? The reserve vehicles, where do you store them?
Well, the ones that are in use are mostly in the firehouses. We keep a couple of them over at the shop at Central. So when vehicles come in for service, we can let the crews switch out right there. But we don't have room to store, but just 2 or 3 of them inside the garage space. And so most of them are stored at sites that chief has designated for the reserves. And those are, the crews have to go to those locations to switch their equipment over and take those trucks out for use. And there are days when the reserves are completely used. It's not like we got 10 fire trucks sitting around not being used. I mean, there's probably 10 or 12 of them broken at any given time. And so the spares are just enough to keep them on track as far as having enough for all the crews to use.
Is that outdoors or indoors, Chris?
Indoors, both at my facility and at the firehouses. Now, once we get ready to scrap them, then we'll leave them outside temporarily if they don't have a lot of things on them that can be stolen. Usually we strip that stuff off,
right,
so that we can put it on replacement parts. In fact, the last one we sent out to auction looked like it had been nibbled on by fish for a few years or something, because there were doors off and panels off and brass off and everything else. So if we can use it for a spare part, we'll take the parts off it because it's worth more than the scrap value of the vehicle is.
Chris, I think one point that's really important is that we keep so many spare vehicles for a couple things. Obviously, when there's a problem with a vehicle, but remember that all these vehicles need standard maintenance. And so whenever they come into the shop for a PM, an oil change, a tire rotation, whatever they need, this is not a quick in and a quick out. These ladies and gentlemen are still on service, and so they need a vehicle to take with them.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I see another question related to the sheriff. Since he's not here online at the moment, we're going to have to forward these questions to him and we'll have to get answers from him. Other than age, what factors are considered in making replacements?
Chris?
It's mostly the use of the vehicles. Now, sometimes the trucks will get moved from one house to another because some houses are higher use than others. But that's an operational call the chief and his staff make about whether or not they want to move a vehicle from one place to another. So the main issue is age and mileage. And we're still coming to grips with what the idle reduction is on the newer vehicles with the auxiliary power units. It used to be that the wear and tear on the engines was the deciding factor in how long they lasted. And we were lucky to get 10 years out of one without having to put a $50,000 engine and a 30,000 pump and a 20,000 transmission in one. So we haven't had that problem, but we've only had the current vehicles since 2017. So we don't really know how long they're going to last, but we think they're going to last longer because of using auxiliary power units. So not only does it save fuel and it saves on emissions, it should prolong the life of the drivetrain of the vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, some other questions on sheriff. Hey, communications, I have a question for you. There was a question about, and I had asked earlier in the meeting, are the chats saved? Someone from
I'm
communication.
unaware of that.
What's that?
I said I'm unaware if it is.
Okay.
It says it's recording our messages, so.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. What I'd like to be able to do is get to the sheriff and get him to answer these questions. And so we'll get him in and we'll get some back in writing. Yeah, unfortunately, we weren't able to get to him live with responses, but I'm sensitive to the questions you have, and we'll get him to answer those, and we'll get either back live on person, or we'll get something in writing so that we can get those distributed. I think, okay, well, let me see. Okay. Would it be possible to donate fire engines to trade schools to provide educational opportunities?
You know, I think Chris has answered that pretty well. Chris Amos, once we're done with the fire truck, I mean, we'll take every spare part that we could possibly use off a truck that has blown an engine or lost a transmission and it has reached the point of not being viable and not worth trying to repair, you know, and we stock those items. And by the time we get done with the truck, the only thing left is the frame and the wheels it might roll on, which sometimes it doesn't even have those and has to be towed away. So being able to donate it to a trade school, there's nothing left but rusted scrap metal. And believe me, we take good care of these trucks. You look at some of these, 20-year-old trucks sitting on the street, and from the outside, they do look pretty good, but they've had some wear and tear. And, once you get into an issue with the frame or the second or third transmission, it's not worth doing it anymore. So.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, that's the last question related to fire. Now, and thank you for your presentation, Chief, and your time. Again, I'd like to go to the buildings and police projects as such. We'll move that to next week. I did want to address some of the general questions we got early on. A number were related to the use of ARPA funds and basically how we divvy that up, and then the purpose of the committee process moving forward. Okay. Again, within your documents that were circulated last week and also posted online, we've got the capital committee's capital policies and procedures. It defines what the capital committee is. It defines the Citizens Advisory Committee. And again, your role as a Citizens Advisory Committee is to provide advice to the capital committee as it formulates a plan and recommendations for capital improvement projects. And so, but ultimately that recommendations the capital committee make is up to the elected officials. So you are an advisory committee to the capital committee, which then makes recommendations on capital spending, but ultimately the appropriation is up to the Board of E&A and the Board of Aldermen. So that process, and if you'd like to look at those policies, those are again posted on the website. In terms of ARPA funding and other sources of funding, yeah, it was interesting because ARPA, the current allocation the city has received is $498 million. We'll receive it in 2 installments. We've received half of it. And as you probably heard, we've already appropriated a good amount of that that was approved this week. Now, I did receive a question earlier. I think that was a separate email question about, well, the infrastructure piece, there's infrastructure piece of ARPA only relates to water, sewer, and broadband. So what are we doing on this other capital? Well, just for your, there are 4 actual buckets under ARPA. One of them is the assistance, direct assistance, economic impact of the pandemic and us and the city responding to it. That's primarily what this first installment appropriation is addressing. There is also the infrastructure of the water, sewer, and broadband. And there is also premium pay for public safety purposes. There's a 4th category, and that's revenue replacement. So in other words, the city, as a result of the pandemic, realized a significant loss of revenue. And what ARPA is doing is, and there's a formula for that, calculating how much revenue was lost and what it would take to make us whole. But more importantly, what it does is it provides a sort of a guide for uses of those funds. And one of those uses is specifically identified as capital improvement infrastructure, pay-go infrastructure, right? And actually, it's recommended as a good practice simply because this is one-time money. You obviously do not want to get yourself involved with obligating yourself for recurring operations that would continue once the funding goes away in 3 years. So a big portion of this in revenue replacement piece would be available for capital. Now, in addition to that, we have our normal sources of capital funding, again, the half-cent sales taxes and some of those park funds that were appropriated with Board Bill 1, our regular annual operating budget. In addition to that, as a matter of course, under ordinance, if you have a surplus in the beginning, in any given fiscal year, 1/2 of that surplus is allocated towards the capital fund. And as I mentioned earlier, we have about a $16 million to allocate from directly to the capital fund. And that would have no particular strings attached, since simply it's not federal funds, it's local funds. So if we were trying to maximize, for instance, our federal match, that's something that you'd want to be able to do with those funds simply because you can. You can't use ARPA to match, which is a federal fund, to match match another federal fund. So as we strategize how to make their best recommendation, it will probably be, all right, you're using this pocket of city's capital funds for these projects to maximize the benefit, and then ARPA funds for these other projects. And so that's what we're looking at. In terms of going forward in the process, as I mentioned, next week, we'll be talking about city buildings and vehicles, as well as some of this follow-up on police building that we didn't get to tonight. After that, the following week, the last week in August, I'll not be available, so we're not going to have a meeting that final week of August, but we do have Parks, Recreation, and Forestry scheduled for the 2nd of September. So, and so what I would expect is any other departments that we have not covered, in addition to Parks, we would take up on that meeting of the 2nd and go over that. And then perhaps one meeting after that, we could talk about how you want to, any other follow-up questions, any other materials that we need, anything that we haven't covered up to that point, so that we can get that information out to you so you can start deliberating and making some of your comments and input so that we've got something for the capital committee. I should point out that the capital committee is also meeting. They're going through these hearings as well with departments. Actually, you received this briefing, public safety, before the capital committee has actually done it, because we're vetting these things as well. And so we're both going simultaneously through this process, but we hope to conclude somewhere around mid-September or thereabouts, to at least get the capital committee enough information so that we can make some recommendations. So that's where we stand right now. Let me see. I'm still trying to understand. We are discussing requests for ARPA. Yeah, this is not, we tap selectively, the city choosing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, most of these are, okay. Most of
Well,
these are,
I had one question from the beginning.
okay, sure.
I was wondering, does the city have any sort of asset management software in place?
Rich, do you know?
So they have pavement management or paving programs, but that would be, other than that, in the airport and possibly the water division, we do not.
Okay. One thing, just as a recommendation, if eligible, using these funds to develop or get an asset management software, so all of these line items can be through one program. They exist, they're out there. Just thought I'd throw it out.
No, that's actually, that's a good suggestion, actually. Make sure you put that on your form as well, so we got it. But no, that's actually, it's the kind of thing that we'd like to hear about. Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, again, I'm sorry we went late a little bit, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but we managed to get through. Thank you for your time and everyone's efforts, and we will see you all next week.